Hey, beautiful good afternoon from Midgård Black Ship in southern Sweden. Finally, we got the first of proper April weather. Beautiful sun, 25 degrees in the sun, t-shirt weather. So yeah, it's time to do an update video on the actual circle itself that I've designed around this ship for the world's smallest ecological footprint. And the first duties of the year, every year, what this is set up for is including all these trees that I've planted 10 years ago and in patches around the ship. So they're the basis, the framework of the system. I planted them first while I was building years ago because they take the longest time to mature. You want your trees into around the 20-year-old mark before you start coppicing for firewood, for example. But there's the coppicable trees in the circle are not just fuel trees. Basically, some of them are shade trees for certain times of the day, for certain sun-sensitive plants in the food forest that's coming later. And some of them are just purely for biomass. Every autumn, all this leaf fall in the path that I'm walking on, that is already dropping enough biomass, which is 99% carbon, for the toilet cover materials in our dry toilet system, which is now legal, thankfully. So that is actually food for the microbiology. We want it fungal dominant in the thermal composting. And then there's the other thermal composting that we have planned, which is the Jean-Pon method thermal composting. Also thermophilic, means the heat creating small critters find their food and have their sex, have their parties in the compost pile, and that's what heats up the pile. But anyway, in this one, it's for the hot water system of the ship. That will be on the north of the ship, some way up the hill, connected to the roof rain catch system. So that will gravity feed a wood chip compost, 5 meters by 5 meters and about 1.5 meters high. And in it will be coiled piping and a reservoir that goes from the rain catch system, and that will go into the building, into our accumulator tank between the bathroom and the dining room. So what I'm doing here is every April during this exact week, going around collecting the wind-blown small birch branches. This is all self-harvesting stuff, which is why I say a place for everything and everything in its place. By tidying up, collecting into piles, like the one behind me, that can be shredded for this compost system, for the thermal composting wood chip compost, to ideally 8 millimeters. You get 60 degrees minimum hot water for 6 months per load. So if I clear up the pathway after all the storms, blowing down all the small birch branches and willow branches, then that can be chipped, and there's our hot water for 6 months each time. And if necessary, if it's a bit cooler than 60 degrees, we can also feed it through the wood stove in the dining room. So there's permanent, sustainable hot water, no cost, no electricity needed. And once it's gone through the compost pile, it starts moving on its own. There's convection in the actual pipes as the water is heated up. So it can even climb uphill into the copper pipe system into the ship to get it to where you want it to be. So that's 2 thermophilic composts, basically. One is for the toilet. That becomes new soil, new beautiful rich black topsoil, night soil as it's called, to feed the new planted woodland for the coming generations outside the circle here. Just to make everybody happy, we don't put it into our food forest system. We unlock the 42 nutrients in the soil by getting the microbiology right in the topsoil and layering organic matter to feed them over the years, where the perennial fruit and nut trees and bushes and everything are going to be planted. So that's what's happening there. And like I was saying, all these leaves, you wait till autumn, and this is the 99% carbon source you need for that toilet system. So I've done that. I need to build a drying netted container west of the ship there in the circle for getting your supply stored up before new rains come back and make it a bit sloppy. But quantity-wise, after 10 years of my trees here maturing, just the early ones I've planted, there's already enough biomass for toilet cover material for a family year-round. So that's sustainable. The question is how much more growth is needed to increase the biomass of the small branches to be enough for 6 months at a time hot water heating composting. But we're going to find that out. That's part of why this is a research ship for the cold climate north. But we're on our way, and to begin with, we have enough exterior woodland out in zone 3 outside the circle to be able to compensate and build up the first couple of compost piles to run some tests on the ship systems either this winter or next spring. So everything's a harvest on this pathway around the ship. Nothing goes to waste. Everything that falls on the raised beds that will have the perennial food forest planted in, we let settle. So it's self-layering. Less work for us to keep finding organic material and carbon to feed the soil, to make it fungal dominant. We already had about another 15 mushroom species move in on their own already because of the amount of biomass that's occurring here since I did all of this. So this is great. It's all going very quickly in the right direction, and everything within the natural world is on our side. It's all contributing to speed it all up. So people come out here expecting to see a fully installed food forest and things, but they just see overgrown and leaf litter and things like that, and they don't get it. They think I've been talking crap about how far we've come. But really, I've planted 5,350 coppiceable trees here. It's great. It's perfect. I probably wouldn't even need to do more than that because I was traumatized from the woodland protests in England in the 90s. I wanted to plant back 10,000 trees that we couldn't save at the Newbury bypass protest. Those oaks they took and burnt for new roads. But you see that in the SVT documentary. Yeah, so that's what I'm doing today anyway. I'm really welcoming the sun back, t-shirt weather, getting the first supplies of the year stocked back up again. I did a week of firewood, so I've got another three months of firewood sustainably harvested in the ship now. Gone through a couple of weeks of media campaigns, so we can get seen out there in preparation for the final phase of fundraising for the front greenhouse of the ship, botanical cells, copper pipes, wires for the solar panels, and a few final finishes, as well as buying in more species for the food forest. Parallel to that, Sarah and her mother Monica, they've been buying cheap fruit and nut trees that they've been finding out there. So they're piling up in the shade house, bare root. So we're going to start working with them soon and get them into the optimal positions for those species. The big cathedral trees, like walnut and sugar maple and things like that, we'll put to the north of the circle because otherwise they'll shade out all of the smaller perennials and summer fruits and things, which will be on the south of the circle, close to the waterways. But also walnut, or at least black walnut, is allelopathic. So it kind of sterilizes the soil around it by putting out some kind of chemical from the roots, so other things can't really coexist there. But I think there's more research done since I got into that, so I'll update myself later when we come to planting the walnut. But we got hazel and beech nut as well, and apples, pears. We actually got a ginkgo tree as well, which is good for brain function, good medicine, Chinese medicine. So, and then there's a few fruit bushes and things they've got as well. We already have about 20 fruit trees, edible trees, tree crops in from last year that Sarah bought. There's one over there behind me. I don't know if you can see. It's black mulberry here. And there's also another hazel over there that went in last year. Right, the strawberries coming up here as well, which I put in years ago, and they're still here, even though the nettles are covering up everything while I haven't been busy and doing the shade work for me, keeping the water in the soil during summer. So yeah, this was all about the framework of my design for the world's smallest ecological footprint. It's roughly a 50-meter diameter circle around the ship. The ship's 30 meters long, almost central to the circle. The circle's not a complete circle, but it's going to be beautiful anyway. It's going to be a full jungle, 9-layered food forest with everything you can think of in it. And some overproductive species planted in, so we have something to trade with local milk farmers and people producing milk, cream, cheese, butter, that kind of thing, until we eventually maybe get a couple of our own cows. But right now everyone's focused on the horses, so I don't really want to be eating them. It was kind of taboo in my culture to be eating your horses. I don't eat meat anyway, so I'm going to be using beans and pulses a lot, and then nuts and berries, and it's all good stuff. I'm still alive anyway, so that's a good sign, and I've still had the energy to do all of this over the last 25 years. So now we're finally ready. Well, one more year of ship development really, but we'll be 100% focused on getting a whopping great food forest in all at once by next spring. So that's what I'm going to be pushing for there anyway. I'm sorry if it sounds babbly this, but I just want any excuse to be walking around the pathway because it's a beautiful day. It really is. And the ladies are out dealing with the horses over there. So I'm left to my own devices. Wild human with all the wild native species that I've been working with in the past. So this stuff doesn't cost you anything really. Terraforming the landscape for optimal water and carbon cycle reconnection and for your future food security, and then going out and finding self-seeded trees and bushes, learning about them, the medicinal values, the household values, and values to the rest of creation in your little ecosystem. You want to be building up as much diversity as possible, but preferably with some background training, knowledge, education on polycultures, what groups of plants grow well together and support each other and attract the right insects and microbiology. And they start doing the work then for you. You don't have to be doing anything, but you know all year round the system is still developing in your favor. And so my kids' generation, they're not going to have any of this work to do. It will be well established. All these perennial trees we're talking about, willow by the water that I planted, they're called climax species. They take 5 to 7 years, and suddenly they start producing in abundance, and they will continue to give more and more and more each year. That's why, for example, for a family, you only need one oak tree if you're planning on using acorns to make flour for your household to grind at your kitchen table. And last year, right on the edge of the circle, we spied that one lone oak had planted itself in one of my hills. So the animals are helping. There's used to be a wire running across the land for the power grid, and squirrels kept running across it between the tree lines. And I guess they dropped an acorn here. So I think this was it. I'm not sure now. It's either that or that. Oh, that feels like it. But anyway, yeah, we got an oak. So all I have to do is look after that, make sure it stays healthy, add things to this bit of the landscape which are favourable for oaks. And Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt, bish bosh bosh, job done, result. Your future generations have got flour from acorns. And a beautiful tree as well. And the other thing is with oaks, these plantation forests, they attract like one form of caterpillar, which usually feast on what's planted in monoculture. Oaks, they attract about 50 kinds of different caterpillars and all kinds of life, which really boosts the health in your system. People think everything's in competition in the natural world, but they're just sadly misinformed. That's an old myth. There is so much cooperation going on through necessity, because nothing other than humans, nothing wants to completely wipe out its food supply or its home building materials. So why the heck would anything intelligent totally wipe out something that for millions of years it's learned to coexist with. So all of this hunting, food chain stuff is partially true, but it's never really to extinction. And I'm glad to hear this week the wolves are back as well. And that's, instead of hunters with guns and going out shooting wildly, then that's what keeps the pressure on the deer and moose to stay in packs, keeps them moving so they don't overgraze. Apex predator. So an eagle the other day as well, same thing there really. It's keeping pressure on the rodents, and owls we've had back here now moving into the system. Bats as well, keeping the insect populations manageable. So the work I need to do by the time we've got the food forest installed is getting less and less, because all my non-human relatives are moving in here as the back framework of a really healthy, resilient system. And then the last thing I want to say on the choice of fruit and nut trees and bushes and things like that, we take them all. We don't care about cross-pollination. We don't care about what's being pedigree bred for specific qualities. It's nice when we get them, but they're really expensive and they're usually grafted. But you can try from your own seed. You'll get a completely different taste of fruit compared to the parent plant, especially with cherries. But it's also a resilience move. Basically, you'll see in time which produces the most, which tastes the best, which is the most nutritious, which is the most beautiful for certain positions, pollinator attractors. And then, of course, we have attracted so many bird species that never used to be here when this was just a flat grassy field before I started. So everything in the natural world is telling me, keep going, thank you, we're moving in the right direction. You're producing food security and habitat security for all of life, land and life, including the micro-communities beneath our feet. It couldn't be better than that. We just need to keep studying, keep observing, take time to observe season by season, year after year, and it will show you. You don't need academia, you don't need years in a classroom. You really don't. That's all false. That is not knowledge. It's not experience. It's not involving the natural world telling you. Laboratories take species out of context, out of their natural community to study them. And you can't, because you miss the whole relationship that's going on. And in some species you put into fear and stress, so they're not going to behave naturally anyway, especially not without their food and habitat relatives. So, this has turned into a long video. I do apologize. But it's because I need to get back on with the build now for a few days before we get a Swedish rockstar visit and my Lakota friend from Turtle Island, as well as some school teachers from an international school in Gothenburg. So I'm looking forward to meeting them too. There's talk of collaboration with teaching Earthship at the school. So gladly open to hear all about that. So yep, stay tuned. We will get the focus back on the build, and it will be intensive this summer. I'm just waiting for the May switch in weather, and I'll deal with the outer shell as well. Finally, we'll be on the front face and final roof detailing before the rooftop gardens can be put on for our annual vegetables, where we can disturb the soil, not like the perennials. We don't want to keep disturbing the micro community that are in symbiosis with the perennials we plant in. Right, that is it. This really energized me with this sun and warmth and everything. And all of this media attention as well. It came as a bit of a shock and surprise, and don't know where it's going to lead, but in all honesty, this is what's needed. Greta Thunberg kind of got the idea, but she didn't have the background of what the solutions were and the education behind. But I've heard that she's gone off in that direction now into permaculture, and because of her age, what's wrong with that? These sad old men who've been attacking her around the world. What I am is the real deal, who's about to step into the light and say, right, it's time to start paying attention and picking up your own weight of your existential responsibilities out there. Otherwise, there isn't a future left on this planet. Food security, habitat, it's going down hard. So we can't let this happen. We really can't. We need to get to work together locally and start restoring and rehabilitating landscapes and creating regenerative career paths within local food security, home building, off-grid systems, all the securities you can think of. We are doing nothing negative here, so don't believe anything that may come out in any negative angled press out there. It's just complete bullshit. Right, 20.5 minutes. I better shut up. But I think I've said everything that was on my heart today. I wish you all a really beautiful and productive day out there. I hope you are considering being kind to each other. No more lies and self-deceptions or distractions or psychosis in a lot of cases. Please, let's just get busy together. I'll be here. I'll be right here beside you doing the work if you need any kind of backup, especially background research or an example to use over the next couple of years. So thank you all for following and paying attention, you who are, especially those in the Patreon channel who are helping pay for the communications to keep making these videos. It's essential. I basically live on zero income. I'm a minimalist. I'm fully committed to the work. And because of that, significant others in my organization, the Medicine Waste Cooperative, are backing me up, paying for my food until we're food secure. So, yeah, thank you, everybody. It couldn't be done on my own, really. I do everything I can on my own, but I really push it to the limit. So, yep, standing strong. Keep going out there, people, the ones who are working already on this. And I'll be updating again soon. Bye for now.